Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Jessica Recommends. And as you may know, if you can see the t-shirt of the day, as per the usual, or you may just already know, it's Banned Books Week. So here I am wearing one of my favorite t-shirts that says, "Everything was beautiful and nothing hurt," which is a quote from one of my all-time favorite books, Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, which is one of the most frequently banned books in America. So let's talk about it. But first, what am I reading this week? On a lighter note, I am reading Into the Narrow Dark by Tad Williams, part of his Austen Ard books, some of my all-time favorites as well. I love these books. They are precious to me, and I am kind of sad that this series is now winding down because it's been so great to get back into Austen Ard and to reconnect with the characters from Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn that I love so much. But at least I still have several hundred more pages to go and another book of several hundred more pages after this one. So we are reading as a family Impossible Creatures by Catherine Rendell still, and we're really enjoying it. And I am listening to Striptease by Carl Hyacin for an audiobook right now. But let's talk about banned books. Right now, there is a lot going on with banned books, and it's really kind of horrible. There are librarians, particularly school librarians, absolutely just fleeing the job, which is one of the most important jobs that we could have. Librarians are so vital to our society, and school librarians are on another level. They carefully curate books for the library that will educate and entertain the audience for their library, whether it's a public library, they know what their audience is, if they're in a rural community, if they're in a more urban community. If they are in a school, then they are looking at books that are appropriate for the age groups, that are on curriculums that the kids are going to need to know for AP tests, all those things. And they are being accused of terrible things. They are leaving the profession because they just can't take it anymore. And books are just being ripped off the shelves on the say-so of someone who's never read them, but who, in my all-time favorite case, saw a TikTok by someone about how there are some books that are bad and went to a school district here in Utah, gave them a list of books, and demanded that they be taken out in order to protect her children. None of her children were old enough to attend school, and most of the books on her list are not in a school library because they are adult books. It was a whole hullabaloo, but the result of it was that 3 school librarians quit after the way they were treated by the administration. It's an awful thing that's happening, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse. But I am not going to talk about why certain books have been banned. If you care, you can go look that up. I'm not going to sit and defend like, well, this shouldn't have been banned because it only has like one swear word in it or whatever. No, I'm here to talk about why these books are important to me. I've gathered some of my favorite books that I have been shocked to find are banned or challenged, especially some of them are newer books that have been challenged right here in the school district my kids attend, and they are books that my whole family just loves. And it's important to us that these books are on the shelves and that other people can enjoy them as much as we do, because that is the thing about book banning. Uh, I determine what my kids read. I am their mother. I share with them books that I think they will enjoy. But conversely, I have also said to them, you know what, I think that you will not like that, or you are too young to read that, because I'm aware, even if I haven't read the book, of maybe what the content is of a book. And I know my children, and I know what they might be emotionally prepared to read and what they might not. I have actually seen that there are things that, oh, you're going to be reading this year and about World War II, and you maybe don't know some of these details. So we've had a discussion in advance. Like, so this is a real thing that was happening during World War II, and that's what this book is about. So just to prepare you, this is what you're going to be reading about. But this book is really good, and your teacher selected it for discussion, so we just wanted you to be prepared. I have never once seen a book on a list for any of my children to read, or come across a book in the school libraries when I've been volunteering at my kids' schools and thought, oh no, that should never be, given to a child. Just the opposite. I have been made aware by school librarians at my kids' schools, by their language arts teachers, of wonderful books that I wasn't aware were out there or quite what the topic was, and had amazing discussions with the teachers and the librarians. I've never once encountered a school librarian, a public librarian, a bookseller, or a teacher who was like, I want to show the children the naughty books. No one is like that. That's not a thing. And the thing that really rips my knitting when it comes to book banning is, what right do you have to tell me or to tell my child what we can't read? This is a personal choice. This is a choice that we are making. Every book should be available, and it should be up to the family or the individual to determine what you read. You do not have the right to tell me that my child can't read this book or can't have access to the book. I don't have a right to tell you that your child should be reading this or that book. So let the books be there. And what you can do as a concerned parent is be aware of your child and their maturity level and what they are reading and what they are interested in. I have scrambled to read books I had zero interest in, or at least flip through them just to make sure that, okay, my kid really wants to read this. All the friends are reading it. Let me just quickly flip through and see if anything sticks out that is maybe not for them. And I have actually told my daughter is the one, my middle child, my 15-year-old, is the one who has come home and, oh, all her friends are reading this or that. And I've told her, you can't read that. But it's usually because the book is dumb and poorly written. And I'm like, oh, honey, no, have better taste. Um, Maybe twice with my older kids have I said to them, that is a great book, but you're too young to read it. And I have come back a couple years later and been like, okay, you are old enough to read this now, and I think you'll like it, and let's talk about it afterwards. Kids self-censor. Everyone does. I self-censored the other day. I started listening to an audiobook that was very highly praised and recommended left and right, and I was on hold for it forever from the library. I think I got 5 minutes in, and I'm like, this is already beyond my language limit, and I feel like I have a very, very high language limit. But it was already too much for me, so I returned it to the library on the app. I didn't go demand that the book be erased from existence. Other people apparently love that book, but it was not for me. And I did that as a kid. I remember picking up books and starting to read them and going, oh gosh, ooh, no, icky. And you put them down. Kids do that all the time. They've found that that is very, very common. They'll start to read something like, oh, oh, my friends say this is cool, or oh, my mom said I shouldn't read this, so I'm going to try and read it. And they will look at it and go, okay, yeah, I see why my mom said not to read this. And they'll self-censor, as it's called. Imagine the books that are, now banned and challenged and being removed for shelves that are about tough subjects, things like assault, things like the Holocaust, bullying and abuse. There are kids out there that are experiencing those things. I mean, not the Holocaust, but there are kids out there that are being hurt, and they don't know that that's not okay. And they don't know that that has ever happened to someone else. They don't know how to process it, and they don't know how to get help, or that there will be help available to them. So there are books out there like Speak by Laurie Anderson, that are telling these kids, this is not your fault. This is a bad thing, and here is a place you can go for help. There is information in a lot of these books, even the fiction ones, at the end about, preventing harm to yourself where to go for help if you have been attacked. I'm trying not to hit any words that will get my video banned. So, if you've been attacked, if you've been bullied, if you were thinking about harming yourself, if you are suffering from a mental illness, a lot of these books now provide in the front and the back of these books information about hotlines you can call, websites you can go to get the help that you need to understand that you can get help and you will be okay and you are not alone. That is so important for kids to find. There has never been a case where a kid picked up and read a book and because of that book was like, oops, now I'm gay, or oops, now I'm, I don't know, a 6-year-old drag queen or something. But there has been case after case where kids have picked up a book and read it and gone, I thought I was the only one that this is happening to, and I did not know I could get help. It is so important that books are out there. It is important that kids see themselves in books by reading books by people of color, by people of all genders and whatever you want to call it, anything, you know what I mean? It is important that kids see those different perspectives. It's important for kids to read about people who are not like them because that helps form compassion. That helps them understand different points of view. It changes them, it educates them, it makes them better human beings. And it is important that you see a book also that is like you, so that you can know, hey, I'm not alone. Look at me. I'm in a novel. Someone with my background, someone who likes the things I like, someone who looks the way I look is in a novel. That means I too am a hero. I am important. That is important on so many levels for kids. And by cutting off access to these books, books by diverse authors, books about diverse topics, we are harming our kids more than if we let them read a book that maybe they're 2 years too young for. The other thing that rips my knitting is the whitewashing, PG rating, whatever you want to call it, of history. So many books are being removed from shelves because they talk about uncomfortable topics. So there are kids going through some schools who are unaware of what happened during the Holocaust, who are unaware of what the Civil War was actually fought for, who are unaware of some of the things that happened during the Civil Rights Movement. It is very important that we read all these perspectives. It is very important that we all are educated about history. This is what makes us a learning, growing, progressing, compassionate society. If these books are not available, where will we learn about them? So, that said, let me show you some of my favorite books that are apparently banned or challenged, especially here in Utah. The most recent list that I saw of Utah books, I am shooketh. It shook me. But starting off, picture books. Picture books have been banned. Books like Where the Wild Things Are, a book that I love so much and have loved since I was a child. I campaigned very hard to name my firstborn child Max. I wanted him named Max because I thought Max from Where the Wild Things Are is a cool kid. This is a cool, fun book. I love the monsters. I've got one of these things over here. Shelves are still a mess, but I actually have one of the wild things, a stuffed wild thing on my shelf. And my boy, he is not named Max, but is such a fun book by Maurice Sendak. It's classic. It's award-winning. The art is to die for. This, I mean, just gorgeous. And imagine not having this book in the world anymore. It's been widely banned. The Lorax, I don't have a separate copy. I've got my 6 by Seuss. The Lorax, I have trouble with the reverse camera. The Lorax is so great. I love the Lorax. I actually love the recent animated movie. I think it's Darling. And by the way, you realize why the kids are Ted and Audrey, the 2 main characters, because it's Dr. Seuss and his wife. But anyway, it's Ted and Audrey, and they're so cute. And I love this book, and I love the story of the Lorax. And he speaks for the trees. And when he pulls himself up by the seat of his pants, I remember crying as a little kid, being so sad and thinking he is so sad because of the beautiful trees. It's such a poignant book, and it's done in a way that kids can understand the importance of taking care of our world, taking care of our environment, and just don't take that away from them. He does such great concepts in some of his more advanced books, like the Butter Battle book. He's done such cool things that really help you understand things like how the Grinch stole Christmas, all about, how to it's not about the materialism. It's about the family and the being together, no matter how you celebrate. The important thing about Christmas is not the presents. The important thing about Christmas is being together and celebrating or worshiping as a family. That's such a great book. The Lorax is the same, but with trees. It's this very important concept that is done in a way that any child can understand when you read it to them. So good. Love that book to pieces. Um, Where the Sidewalk Ends. I am not the hugest poetry fan, but I have always loved Shel Silverstein. I remember discovering this in second grade. Other kids already knew about it. I remember there being fights in our school or our classroom over who got to read the book during reading time and stuff. And I did not understand what it was or what it was about. And they're like, oh, it's poems. And I was already like, roses are red, violets are blue on board. And then I finally got my turn to read it. I love this book so much. I love the style of the pictures. It kind of reminds me in a way, he started reminding me of things that I liked later, like Berkeley Breathed and Bloom County and things like that. And I love his poems. I think they are so hilarious. They are so clever. And I still have some of them memorized that I have probably not seen since second grade. And I can still recite the whole thing. Sarah, Sylvia, Cynthia Stout would not take the garbage out, and all those. And again, dealing with concepts that kids can understand. He talks about old age. He talks about doing your chores, taking out the garbage, faking sick so you don't have to go to school, and all those things. He exposes those things that every kid is guilty of in such a humorous way. This is such a fun book for that. Apocalypse Taco by Nathan Hale. Hilarious, little bit creepy, about some kids fighting off an alien invasion when they are staying late at the school after doing a play, helping like in the theater or something like that for a play with the sets, and they end up fighting off an alien invasion. This book is super fun. I recommend it all the time. It's a graphic novel by Nathan Hale, who also does the U.S. History Hazardous Tales books, and he's done the Mighty Bite series now, which is a super fun, like vaguely science-y type of graphic novel. But this one is just pure sci-fi. It's golden. I love it so much. Oh, here is a book that might very possibly get banned, but isn't banned yet, but is about banned books that I wanted to talk about a little bit. Kirsten Miller, who did the wonderful Nightmare series with Jason Segel, the actor, she's also done the Kiki Strike books, and then she's done some adult books. And this is one of her adult books. I'm not suggesting that every school put it in their library. This is an adult book. Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books by Kirsten Miller is so good. It made me laugh and it filled me with rage at the exact same time. And it is about a small town where one woman goes in front of the town council and passes around a list of books that she thinks should not exist. And the library immediately has to pull them off the shelves. The school is no longer allowed to teach them. And she's never read most of the books. She wanted attention. And she found a list of books that people are banning. And she jumped on that bandwagon so that everyone would pay attention to her. And she puts out a little free library in her front yard of books that she claims helped her become the great lady she is today, like the Southern Maiden's Guide to Etiquette and stuff like that. And sort of chaos ensues with this book. And most of the books in this book are real. And she talks about real banned books and why they are banned, and also shows how reading these books or banning these books affects this small town It is so good. And it is very, very funny, but it also kind of fills you with rage. Like, this is really happening. This is kind of ripped from the headlines. And I loved it so much. So Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books. It is not for kids. It is an adult book that I highly recommend. But back to the kids' books. The Giver by Lois Lowry. I remember the first time I read this book, blew my mind. I had been hearing about it. I knew it had won an award, and I was working at a bookstore, and this cover came out, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty new cover for that book. And I was thinking, she did the Anastasia books, and this looks so different. I wasn't sure if I wanted to read it or not. And a bunch of the younger booksellers that were still in school, like high school students that came in the afternoons, were like, you have not read The Giver. That book changed my life. Everybody loved it. And I said, okay, I've got to try this. So I grabbed me a copy, and it is so beautiful. The prose in this book is so beautiful. The story is so heartbreaking. And it's one of those sort of dystopian books that really makes you think, like, I could see how we could go down this slippery slope. And it fascinated me that this was a book that reminded me of something like This Perfect Day or A Brave New World or something like that, but is very, very much geared at tweens and younger teens. And I love this book so much. And I think it should be required reading in schools. There is so much to pick apart in this book and to discuss. It's a great book. Bridge to Terabithia rips your heart right out of your chest. Zero apologies. Where were you when you got to that ending and were like, what? Right? That's all I'll say about that. Bridge to Terabithia, Catherine Patterson. Actually, not my favorite of her books. I'm a big fan of Nightingales That Weep, which is set in feudal Japan. Absolutely love that book. But I will never forget where I was sitting in our house in Pocatello, sitting on my yellow gingham bedspread, reading this book. And I was like, Number the Stars. Once again, Ms. Lowry. She does such gorgeous books. I know the Anastasia books were so fun, and Taking Care of Terrific, that are just like almost seem like sort of frothy, like young girl just kind of doing her thing, having adventures and stuff like that. But honestly, if you do a deep dive into those books, she is covering a lot of very serious topics in those books as well, about growing up and your family and moving and bullying and things like that. And then she'll take on a even more overtly serious topic, Number the Stars, which is set in Denmark during World War II. As soon as I started talking about doing this, my daughter, my 15-year-old, is like, well, Number the Stars. She's like, I know it's like on banned book lists. And she's like, I thought everyone just should read it. And I can't believe people would want to ban it. And I'm like, I know, I agree. It is so good. It's a very slender but deep read. And so again, it's a great book to have a discussion about. It's a great book to help kind of introduce kids to what was happening in Europe during World War II. It's a really great book for that, where you can get a lot of discussions out of it with younger readers and help them understand different perspectives and help them understand history. It's done so well. And speaking of books that blew my mind and changed my life, this is my actual copy of The Witch of Blackbird Pond, purchased from the school book fair, I'm pretty sure, when I was in, I'm going to say 5th grade. Let's just throw that number out there. I don't even think that's the first time I read it. I think I got sick of checking it out from the library. I identified so strongly with Kit, the main character of this book. She is moved to a new place. She does not have friends. She's living with her cousins. She doesn't really get along with them. She's not from the same background. I moved quite a bit as a kid. I was always moving with my parents and my siblings, but so that was not quite the same. But I understood that feeling of being a stranger in a place where you're like, there are in-jokes and things that people do and don't do that are totally alien to you. And I knew exactly what that was like. And she loves reading. and she's educated and she can read and she loves the sea and she can swim. And I loved that so much. I was just getting into reading when I really found this book. I was just learning that it could be beyond just earning your pizza by reading a ton of books, right? So um, I really identified with someone who was reading all the time. I loved her story. I loved the light romance in it, but oh, her cousin's romance is just the one that gets me every time. I have that one scene. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. The one scene, I have that memorized. Um, I'm not saying that one scene like it's spicy. It's not even slightly. It's the opposite of spicy. It's just literally the most romantic thing you'll ever read in your life. Um, and they're Puritans, for heaven's sake. Listen, the irony of the fact that Fahrenheit 451, a book about banning books, is one of the most banned books right now in America. I mean, I think the irony is completely lost on the people that are banning books. But if you have not read Ray Bradbury's first novel, I highly recommend it. It is so good. Bradbury was some sort of crazy prophet. He actually um, has accurately in his short story predicted all kinds of things like smartwatches, Twitter, smart homes, all those kinds of things he has predicted. And a lot of them are here in Fahrenheit 451. And the idea that the government is repressing people's access to books because they enjoy keeping the people, it's better for the government to keep the people ignorant, complacent, and biddable. So they give them tons and tons of entertainment options and take away the books. And the people are by and large fine with that. And the government is great with that because the government tells them what to do through the TV and they are very biddable and they do it. Everyone should read Fahrenheit 451. Speaking of World War II, everything was beautiful and nothing hurt. Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. It's called Slaughterhouse-Five or The Children's Crusade. Is a gorgeous book partially based on his own experiences during the bombing of Dresden. He was there. He was a prisoner of war when Dresden, which was one of the most beautiful cities in Germany, was absolutely bombed to ash. And he promised a friend's wife that if he ever wrote a book about the war, he would call it The Children's Crusade, because she was so sick and tired, she said, of men writing books that glorified war. And he said, that is the opposite of what my book will be. And it is. It's also science fiction. Sorry. Uh, I can't really talk about it. I don't want to spoil anything. It's got a science fiction element that is so amazing. It's written in the style of an alien work of art. There are these aliens in the book that how they experience art is their pictures, their novels, and everything is just sort of scattered images, almost in an impressionist style. But once you view the whole thing, you read every word of the book, in your brain, you have the correct picture of the entire work of art. This book is not in chronological order, but when you are done reading it, you will be able to picture the entire life of this man, Billy Pilgrim. You can picture his entire life in chronological order. It is so superbly written. Night by Elie Wiesel. This is required reading in a lot of schools. It wasn't in mine. And so I did not read it until a few years ago as an adult when I realized, my gosh, I've seen that book all my life and have never read it. It is nonfiction. It is based on his own experiences in a concentration camp with his father. It is so heartbreaking, so harrowing to read, but it is life-changing. His experiences, what you see through his eyes, is so necessary for those of us who were not there to help us understand what it was like. My oldest, this is his copy that he read just a couple of years ago in high school. He's like, it's a hard book to read, but I loved it so much. And he was just telling his sister, when he saw it, that's what he said. And she is going to be reading it this year. And she's like sort of looking forward to it and not. And he's like, exactly. It's like a hard read, but afterwards you will love it. Mouse by Art Spiegelman, who found the best way that he could talk about his experiences during the war would be to draw it, because he is an artist and a cartoonist, and he drew the Jewish people in the camps as mice and the Nazis are cats. This is just such a glorious book. And I don't mean glorious in like, oh, just a delight, but a glorious book in the fact that he is able to put down so much, to put down so much emotion and so much of his personal history in a way that can be understood by so many people is why I say it's glorious. The Graveyard Book, one of my favorite Newbery winners from the last few years. Absolutely. Based loosely on the Jungle Books, we have our Mowgli is actually a young boy who is being raised after being chased out of his home as an infant by someone who is sent to get rid of his family. He takes refuge in a graveyard and is raised by ghosts in a graveyard and tutored by a vampire. And the things that he encounters, and it's sort of like separate vignettes, is so fun and so unusual. And it's spooky without being super scary. There's kind of one character that kind of gets me, but I'm a big chicken. I've read it aloud a couple of times to my kids, and they've absolutely loved it. It's a really fun read aloud because the chapters are almost like it's almost a collection of short stories. New Kid by Jerry Craft, such a great graphic novel, and it's actually a series now. There are 3 books out. We have loved all 3 of them, about a kid going to like kind of a different school where he's one of the few um, people of color at this school. And since he is mixed race, people are kind of weird about it, and teachers don't understand his friendships and his struggle to make friends and the way he and his friends talk to each other and things like that. It's so realistic and so natural, and I love it so much. And the kid wants to be an artist, and so sometimes you see his drawings, and like how he deals with stuff that's happening to him is to kind of make his own cartoons. So he's making his own graphic novel within the graphic novel and stuff like that. And you see pages, and it's really great. The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. I love this book. It is such a hoot. It is so funny, but it is also very heartbreaking. It is sort of semi-autobiographical. Alexie really went through some of the things that his main character suffers from, and is about a young native boy who decides to go to the white people high school, basically to leave the reservation and to go to a better school for him and play basketball and do all these things. But he's sort of masking the fact that he does not have a great home life. He's masking the fact that they are very, very poor, and trying to fit in with these other kids at this more affluent school and stuff. I love this book. It is so good. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is a book that I actually said to my 2 oldest kids, like, when you are ready, you will love this book. My oldest has now read it. My 15-year-old, I would like her to read it this year. I mean, if you know about this book, you know about this book, right? This book about police violence in Black communities, so good and ripped from the headlines, just heartbreaking. But I love Star, the main character. I love her so much. I love her siblings and their friends. They are so real. The way they talk, they're so natural. The dialogue is so good. But I just particularly love Star. I love her internal monologue about how she's one way with these friends and one way at school and one way with her family. And any teenager, I feel like, can understand what that's like. I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. I had never heard of Jandy Nelson or her first book, The Sky is Everywhere. And then I got this ARC at like a library association gig or something like that. And there was like one left and people were fighting over it. And I'm like, oh, what is that? And all these librarians turned, do do not know who Jandy Nelson is. I'm like, no. So they let me take the last arc, and I thank them every day. I loved this book about these siblings who are both artists in different ways. And it sort of has like magical elements. There is interaction with ghosts to a certain extent and some things like that. Or is it all in the one character's head? We don't really know, and it doesn't matter. But it's a beautiful book for artists. It's a book for siblings, like dealing with family issues and just things like that. I love it so much. World War II, again, Anne Frank Tagebuch. My only copy, I realize the only copy we have in the house is in German. The Diary of Anne Frank is such an important book. It is someone's voice who has passed. This is her story. This is what she went through. Her family story is so unusual. It is so tragic. And I think it's so important for kids, especially to be reading about someone their age, her diary. This is what she went through. This is what everyday life was like for her. This is what happened to her. It's so important that we have these first person narratives of these important events in history. We are so lucky to have her diary. It should be read by everyone. Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. I have never laughed so hard in my life. Um, Reading a book, I was probably way too young when I read it. I was probably reading some stuff that, oh, a bit too much for my little brain, but I was okay. I did not turn out, well, I turned out a little bit weird, but it didn't, turn me into some sort of sociopath or something like that. Catch 22, again, the absurdities of war, much like Slaughterhouse-Five, but done in such an incredibly ludicrous way that you just really start to understand this is how insane it is that we are at war. Nothing here makes sense. It's where we get the phrase, well, it's a catch 22 from. This is just a number that he picked. Everything about it. But Yossarian, the main character, is so fantastic. These last two are at my 15-year-old daughter's insistence, because we just found out that they are both being banned and challenged. Friends Forever is the most recent of Shannon Hale's memoirs about her teenage years. So this is what actually happened to her growing up in Utah, and illustrated gorgeously by Luan Pham. We love these books so much about young Shannon dealing with things like braces, and does she need to wear deodorant, and should she be wearing makeup, and dealing with, are her friends being nice to her? Are they kind of secretly being mean to her? And all the things that she's dealing with anxiety, depression, and just regular school stuff. They're so fun. My daughter loves all of Shannon's books. I love all of Shannon's books. And Friends Forever is the third book in the series. The first book is Real Friends. Second book is Best Friends. We recommend all three. And I have not read this, but my daughter's telling me I have to. They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. She was obsessed with this book. She checked it out from the library. She immediately had to have her own copy. She had to have the sequel. So she has both copies in her room. She has read them both more than once. So those are my recommendations of books that have been banned. If you are still with me and still listening, please go to, if you live in Utah, letutahread.org. LetUtahRead.org is a website dedicated to helping combat book banning here in the state of Utah. You can go there if you are not in the state of Utah and help us get books back in the hands of children. It is so important that everyone have access to books. We are not here to judge what book is appropriate for someone else. We are here to make sure that everyone has access to the books, to the education, to the knowledge that they need to have to make them better people. And that is why I am against book banning.